Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking about autoimmune diseases and how it is tied in with emotional stress, as I am joined by autoimmune expert Josie Warren. When Josie was young, she suffered a lot of autoimmune diseases, eating disorders, anorexia, anxiety, depression, alcoholism, and the doctors were saying, hey, this stuff is lifelong, so you'll just have to deal with it and manage it. But Josie did not give up. She knew better, and she found out that it was connected with emotional stress. So she's going to be talking to us today about how that's tied in and all the things she went through and how she was able to bounce back and how she is helping others bounce back. So Josie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Curtis, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate being on and look forward to sharing with your listeners today.
Absolutely. Why don't you start off just by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am an autoimmune expert, and it's been a quite a road to get here, and I'm sure I'll be sharing about that. But what I do is I help people permanently resolve their autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses. So autoimmune diseases are where your immune system attacks a part of your body. So conditions like Hashimoto's or fibromyalgia or MS, and chronic illnesses are things such as chronic pain, migraines, and mental conditions like depression and anxiety. My belief is that they are all coming from the same origin. And that is how I was able to fully heal from that whole list of conditions that Curtis shared. And that is the same philosophy that I use with my students now. Thank you.
Well, I know I kind of went through them, but describe in your own words what you went through and different kind of diseases you went through.
Well, I guess it starts out from a young age. Like everyone that I found that has a chronic health condition or an autoimmune disease, we're all people that weren't born well wired to handle the emotional stress of life. So from childhood onward, as stressors happen in my life, things like moving or a sibling being born or parents fighting or heartbreak, I found that I started to develop increasingly more problematic health conditions, but I wasn't making the connection between the emotional stress of my life and my health worsening. So by the time I got to high school, I was already having issues like allergies, sinus infections, and things of that nature. But by the time I got to high school, my dad passed away, and it was after his death and the emotional stress of that I started to develop more problematic health conditions, such as arthritis, anxiety, and eating disorder, and alcoholism. By the time I got into my undergraduate degree, I was already starting to get even more challenges, such as Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And then the stress of going to graduate school, I started to get MS, lupus, common variable immune deficiency disorder. And by the time I was in my about mid to late 20s, I had developed about 8 autoimmune diseases. Like I said, depression, anxiety, ADD, an eating disorder, alcoholism, the whole thing. And I did not know what to do. And I became a therapist, a licensed professional counselor, trying to figure out myself. I just knew that there had to be something I was missing because all the doctors and specialists put me on all kinds of medications, all kinds of supplements and protocols. I was eating very restrictive food diets and nothing was working. So I knew that there was a missing piece. And thankfully, I live here in Denver, Colorado, and was able to be led to an organization that did have answers for me. And that really was my turning point in my life.
So when you went to the doctors, what kind of things were they telling you?
That's a great question, Curtis. And I'm going to speak for all people with these conditions. I mean, when we go to the doctor, I was told many things like, oh, it's your genetics, autoimmune diseases, chronic health conditions, mental health conditions run in my family. So they were telling me, oh, there's a genetic mutation that you have, which is why you have these conditions. or it's hereditary for things like alcoholism that runs in my family as well. Others were telling me, oh, this is actually a problem with your gut. You have a leaky gut and you need to heal your leaky gut. So you need to be on certain food diets and take certain supplements. Western medicine doctors did not have really any reason for what might be the cause of this. They simply put me on different kinds of medications or plasma infusions. But everything I was doing, told to do by all the experts, doctors, and specialists was unfortunately what I now know as symptom management, meaning they did not know the cause of any of my conditions. That's why they were considered chronic conditions. And thus, everything they told me to do, whether it was medication or more alternative and natural techniques, was all to manage the symptoms of my conditions while still having it. I didn't realize that everything I was doing for so many years was never going to heal me. It was just going to help me manage. And so that was something that I now know in retrospect. And when I learned not to just manage, but to heal, was when my health turned around.
Speaking of that, what was the turning point and how did you realize, okay, this is just managing. I need to heal. What was the turning point and how did you get to that point?
Yeah. So for me, after years and I mean, thousands of dollars, like many of us spent on therapists, Western medicine, functional medicine, homeopathy, all the different kinds of therapies and special foods and diets and healers, I really got to a rock bottom point in my life and career. And I realized my health got so bad, I had to leave my career as a licensed therapist working at the Betty Ford Center. I left because my body couldn't handle the stress of working in the environment that I was in. And I just knew, okay, if I can't work, what do I really have to do in my life? What do I have to live for? I need to figure this out. So thankfully, I met a practitioner here in Denver, Colorado, who guided me to an organization that they said would have solutions for people like me that doctors didn't have an answer for. And after years of these worsening chronic health conditions and autoimmune diseases, I knew I fit into that category. The organization is called A New Life Center, and I met with their founder. His name is David Cope, and he is someone who used to have a number of autoimmune diseases and no longer has them. And I met with him and to see if I could join a clinical study they were having on chronic health conditions and autoimmune diseases. And I met with him. I brought my big old stack of paperwork with all my diagnoses and my conditions. And that's when I had my health awakening because I sat in front of him and he looked at my paperwork and he looked at me and then he asked me a question that no doctor or specialists or therapists had ever asked me or knew to ask. And he asked me, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this to yourself? And it felt like the floor dropped in me. And in that moment, I knew he knew that with all the stress and challenges that I had and all the emotional issues and all my health issues, that there was a me connecting all the conditions that I had. And what I realized in that moment that the cause of my conditions I had been looking for all those years, it was me the whole time, that I was the cause. And no specialist knew to look at me. And when he said that, and I heard that as I was the cause, I knew this was different. And I knew that I was the solution and the answer. And the reason I wasn't getting better is I hadn't looked at myself. And when I started the journey inside myself and realizing how I wasn't handling my life and my emotional stress well, it set me on a pathway to empower myself to live my life and respond to my life in a different way. And my body rapidly began to heal and self repair.
Speaking of looking at yourself, talk about the connection between physical and emotional health.
Yeah, that's a great question because so many specialists out there just look at our physical body as the source of our health and they separate it from our emotional health. But I know definitively that our physical health is a response to our emotional health. I can't be physically healthy and be emotionally unhealthy. that physical health starts with how I feel about myself and how I'm experiencing myself on the inside. And so, kind of the secret here is that there is a gap between when we have a stressor and the response. And in that gap is me. I'm in control of my response. It's me. And people who have any kind of chronic health condition or autoimmune disease, unfortunately, what has happened is that they have unknowingly not responded to the emotional stressors of their life well. And in that gap, they have not been responding in a healthy way. And it's the overload of all of the emotional stress that they've put upon themselves by not responding to life in a healthy way that has built up over time. And then over time, what happens is the body begins to break down. There is a term for this called the allostatic load, which really looks at the accumulative stress that people hold and how this causes the body to go into a state of disrepair. And that's what happens. It starts with how we hold on and don't handle our emotional stress. Over time, like a bottle of soda, it builds and builds and builds and pressurizes until the body can't take any more suppressed emotional stress. And we all have a tipping point. For me, that was the stressor of graduating college. For others, it might be, getting married or having a child or the death of a loved one. Whatever it might be, at that point, the body tips over and then physically starts living in a nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for our fight or flight response. But because we're not people that handle stress well, our fight or flight picks up on how chaotic our life feels and thinks that we're under a constant threat, and unfortunately gets locked on. It's from that place the body goes into a state of dysregulation, immune system goes overactive, and we start to develop conditions like I did, autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses. Again, it all starts from our emotional state and how we don't handle our life well. That builds until our physical body breaks down. So to answer your question, Curtis, they are intricately related. They are linked. First, the emotional state, then the physical breakdown, 100%.
And you actually believe in this so much so that you say two things. One is that you feel that you'll never get another autoimmune disease again, and you even stop seeing your therapist. So tell us what makes you believe that you will never get another autoimmune
Yeah.
disease and why you decided to stop even seeing your therapist.
Yeah, great question. So when I realized that the cause was me and that I was in control of my response to the stressors of my life, and also that the things that have happened in my life, it's just life. It wasn't any unique to me than it is to anyone else, that stress is just life. Then I realized there was something I could do about it. And that's what I did in the clinical study that I was part of here at a New Life Center. I learned a new way of how to handle my life and stress that no one had ever taught me before. And I transformed my experience from simply managing all of my symptoms to starting to heal them. Because once I learned how to handle my life in a healthy way and be in the driver's seat of my life by being in charge of how I respond and knowing that it matters, my body physically picked up on that and perceived that I was no longer under constant threat because I was handling my life in a healthy way. I was able to handle stress and realize it was just life. And from that point, my fight or flight turned off. I exited the sympathetic nervous system where I couldn't heal and finally entered the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system our bodies were born to live in. It was there that my body healed and self-repaired, re-entered homeostasis, immune system went back to normal functioning, a body re-regulated, digestive system healed, brain chemistry went back to normal. And within a matter of months, by living in the parasympathetic nervous system, by learning how to handle my life, all my autoimmune diseases and chronic health conditions and mental health conditions all naturally resolved. And so the confidence that I have that I'll never get these conditions again is because now I live in the parasympathetic nervous system, a nervous system where chronic health conditions and autoimmune diseases and mental health conditions cannot exist. So I know exactly what I need to do to stay there. And from that place, my body is all working as I was born and as it was designed. So that's the confidence I have to know I know how to handle my life now. And I know how to emotionally handle my stress. And with that, I have the confidence to know I will never get another chronic health condition or immune disease for the rest of my life. And that's the same confidence that I teach my students who also make the journey from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system.
So you actually have an interesting perspective on diets and supplements. Tell us what that is.
Yeah. So, as I just shared, that everything that I do in this whole process is a natural process. So, for those out there, and maybe even those who don't have a chronic condition or an autoimmune disease, but just know that they're really stressed, we're all taught in this Western world that what we need to do is manage symptoms through things like diets, healthy food diets, certain supplements, maybe getting more sleep, exercise, things of that nature. But what I know to be true is that that's all, again, managing the symptoms. We need to get it stressed before it happens. We don't want to deal with it after the fact. And a coach that just manages the condition after the fact or the health issue after the fact. We want to deal with it before it happens. And so the way to do that is a perspective I call it's not, I didn't invent it, but it's called locus of control, which is to realize that we have a choice in who has control of our life. Do I have an external locus of control, meaning I feel that things and people and the universe or the world or others is driving the car of my life or dictating how I live or how I feel or what has happened to me? Or do I want to shift to an internal locus of control, which is putting me in the driver's seat of my life, which again is allowing me to have a choice in how I respond to life and the challenges or the stressors that come my way. It's just something we've never been taught, that we have a choice in how we respond to life. And it's in that choice that dictates whether I feel chronically stressed and that is held in my body or not. And so I know that that's only something that we can do as humans. And that's what we can do. We can do that naturally. No diet, no supplement will ever change how I respond to life. That's all me. And this is also coming from someone I used to be on, probably 12 supplements a day. I was eating only 5 foods by the time I actually started to heal and got help. So I know that those don't work as a permanent solution to chronic health conditions or autoimmune diseases. And they're not even a solution to stress, if I'm honest.
So, a lot of us, we don't like to ever gain weight. We gain weight, we say, oh, I need to get back in the gym, exercise, lose some weight.
Right.
But you say gaining 30 pounds was the best thing that ever happened to you. Why is that?
Great question. So to tie on to what I just talked about, we're taught that in our society that our physical health is the most important thing. And if we look physically good, that's what I used to think. Well, if I look like I'm in shape and if I look like I'm healthy or if I'm eating the superfoods, then I must be healthy. What I want the listeners to take away from my message today is that health is determined by our emotional state. Health is determined by us and how we respond to our life. And if I'm responding to my life in an unhealthy way, I can know that I'm not physically healthy. Or if I have physical health conditions, like chronic health conditions and autoimmune diseases like I did, it was another clear sign that I was not emotionally healthy and I was unhealthy. So back when I had a lot of autoimmune diseases, I also had an eating disorder, like I shared earlier. And part of having an eating disorder was I restricted my foods. I didn't eat or I purged my foods and I worked out a lot. So on the outside, everyone thought that I was this pillar of health. I was super fit, super thin, was eating all the superfoods, but I know that I was incredibly unhealthy and emotionally unhealthy, developing more and more chronic illnesses and diseases and emotional issues. And so for me, part of healing in the parasympathetic nervous system and my body re-regulating was also my weight and my metabolism re-regulating. Through that process, my brain chemistry rebalanced. And instead of being in recovery from conditions like an eating disorder, I no longer have them anymore. And when my body re-entered homeostasis, I started to develop a healthy relationship with food naturally. didn't take effort. I started to want foods that my body actually needed and no longer withheld the foods that I used to. And through that process, I gained at least 30 pounds. I used to weigh about, gosh, 110 if I'm honest, and now I weigh, 150 on a good day. And my body stays that way no matter what. I just what feels right. I eat healthy, but I also, for fun too, and have fun foods and things, and have gained the weight, feel great, and know that my body is completely healthy because, again, I'm in control of my stress and how I respond. So my life doesn't feel chronically stressful anymore. And all my body, all the parts of it are working as they should.
So what should somebody do if they go to the doctor and the doctor thinks or tells them that, hey, you got some mystery illness?
Yeah, well, if you're like me out there and you feel like you're a medical mystery and you just keep being shuffled from doctor to specialist, maybe to a therapist, or possibly you're just being told that everything you have is in your head, my greatest advice to anyone out there is to listen to yourself. You know best, and you know when something's wrong with your body. And what I have found, because this is how I have fully healed, and I see all the people I work with resolve all of their chronic conditions and autoimmune diseases too, is to know that the origin of all the maybe mystery conditions that you have, it's just you. And it's not that you purposely did something. It's just that you're like me and you were born into the world and no one taught you how to do life. No one taught you how to handle what life threw your way and that your response has mattered. And so, to everyone out there, I want you to be empowered to know that the key to your healing isn't actually going to be in the doctor's office when it comes to chronic health or autoimmune diseases, that the key is you, and to empower you to know that you can respond to life in a different way. You can be in the driver's seat of the car. What you do determines your health. And when you learn a new way, and it's really simple, when you learn a new way of handling your life, your body will move from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, heal and self repair all your seemingly random symptoms or chronic conditions. And you can go back to being the most vibrant, healthy you that you've likely ever had in your life. And that has been my experience, being 8 years completely resolved of all of the conditions I've shared with you today. I have none. I don't take any supplements. I'm not on any special diets. I don't take any medication. My body resolved it all naturally by getting back in the parasympathetic nervous system, re-regulating simply by me learning how to do my life and learning how to respond to the ups and downs of my life in a healthy way. And that's what I teach.
So do you have any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about?
Oh, that's a great question, Curtis. I do. We are like always innovating here. And everyone that's listening out there, I am very excited. It won't be long. I'm going to be launching a new YouTube channel, which will be called the Autoimmune Tipping Point. And I will be Josie Warren, the autoimmune expert. And on that channel, you are going to learn things about autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses that the doctors aren't telling you. Because if you knew, you would actually heal. So I'm going to be sharing with you how to actually get your body to heal, really diving in and elaborating on some of the points and topics I shared about today, and giving people a pathway to just being a normal, healthy person again, free of autoimmune diseases. Also working on a master course, which will hopefully give the listeners and the people who watch it the same health awakening I did, to take a different pathway than they are now and be the key to their healing. And as if people want to come check me out, I mean, I also am doing our program, which is a 10-week online course, but a 6-month program. People can either do it on their own, self-guided, or work with me, which also at the end of the program, the body will resolve and heal from chronic health conditions, mental health conditions, autoimmune diseases. So I am taking people down that same path. So we've got a lot of fun stuff here happening, and would hope that people might be inspired to come check me out.
Okay, well, so that everybody can check you out and follow everything that you're up to, throw out the contact information.
Yeah. First, I like to provide my personal email to everyone out there because I realize that what I talk about is controversial. It's countercultural. We're taught that we can't heal from chronic conditions and autoimmune diseases or mental health conditions, that we're taught that these are lifelong. And that's what I thought for most of my life. So if you have a question, if you have some commentary, if what I said interests you or it brought something up, please reach out to me on my email and I'll provide that first. It's Josie, which is Josie .in as in Nancy .Warren, WARREN at gmail.com. That will be in the show notes. And also, if you want to learn more about my program that I do with individuals with autoimmune diseases or chronic health conditions, please come to my website, which is the hashimotosfix.com. And again, that will be in the show notes. And just want everyone to know out there, while it's called the Hashimoto's Fix, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease, most common for women. The program that I teach works with most all autoimmune diseases and chronic health conditions. And yeah, everyone I work with gets better. So come check me out. Know that there's a different way and know that you don't have to have your conditions forever. You can heal. You just need a pathway to do so.
Absolutely. And the pathway to do so is Miss Josie Warren, the autoimmune expert. We will be putting her contact information, email, and website in the show notes. So check it out. And if you have anybody that is going through similar things that Josie went through, please be sure to send them this episode. Let them check it out. Follow, rate, review, tell a friend. If you have any guest suggestions or topic suggestions, my email is cjackson102@cox.net. And we're going to end the show today by letting Josie close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something that she'd like to touch on that I forgot to talk about, or just any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis. I just have 3 little takeaway actionable tips I want the listeners to have out there. Because I know when I listen to a podcast, I want to know, what can I do? What can I do now? So if anything resonated with you today, or you're just someone out there and maybe you don't have a condition, but you are just know that your stress is you're at that tipping point and worried you might get a health condition, this is going to be for you. So the 3 tips that I want to share with the listeners today is just number 1, like I had to do, you have to normalize your stress. We think that what has happened to us in our life is worse than others or unique to us. We make the things that have happened or are happening so big that we can never overcome them or work through them. So we have to realize that instead of looking at things as challenges and as stressors, that these are actually just life experiences. And the things we have in our life are what happened in life, and it happened in most people's lives and will happen 50 years from now and 100 years from now to people. So please, we must first normalize our stress so that we can actually start to work through it. From there, tip 2 is we want to realize that stress and things that are happening in our life aren't happening to us. That's a place of victim, and we can't heal in that place. We need to be empowered to realize that, again, in between a stressor and a response is me. It is how we respond to what happens in our life that determines our stress experience. And thankfully, that's something we're in control of. When we change that, then we can heal. And step number 3 is, instead of looking at our hardship and stressors and challenges as things that have happened to us, we can transform ourselves by looking at them, our challenges, as opportunities to learn and grow. And it's through putting ourselves willingly out into life, into our challenges, that we become internally and emotionally strong and resilient. And through that process are able to learn and grow and become even better at handling life. And the body will pick up on that and will heal and self-repair. So that's what I wanted to leave the listeners with today.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Josie Warren, autoimmune expert. Once again, please be sure to check her out. Check out everything she's up to and be on the lookout for that YouTube channel coming soon. Josie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Curtis.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.